Greetings, everybody. No, you are not losing your mind. No, you are not dyslexic. No, I have not gone all psychedelic on you. You are indeed seeing backwards lettering on an envelope. Even though it looks like it says Tanet Malaklam, probably 6263 Zob Op TC Notnwen 07460, and it really says it's Malcolm Tent, P.O. Box 3626, Newtown, Connecticut 06470, which is still, even at this late stage of the game, my mailing address, and that means that I am indeed still Malcolm Tent, bringing you this week's episode of Tent Talks Tunes. As always, against incredible technological odds, I am here to tell everybody right here, right now, I am swearing before all of you and the skies above that when I get my house sold and I've got a little bit of money to play with, in theory, I'm going to invest in a camera system that is actually worth a darn, as opposed to Mevo, M-E-V-O, the video streaming platform I've been using for the last probably couple of years, which really started out pretty good and as a decent product for video streaming, but has degenerated into the most worthless lump of garbage that I've ever had to suffer through. And I'm sure you people are tired of hearing me yap about Mevo and how crappy they are. I keep trying, though. I think it's the inner optimist in me. You know, it's like it totally lays an egg one week, and I figure, well, you know, I'll go on next week and I'll start fiddling with it a little bit early and do the firmware update and then uninstall it and then reinstall it and jump through all these hoops I have to jump through in order to make it work. I figure I'll just do that and everything will be okay. But no, it's never okay. It's never okay. Did the same thing this week, started nice and early, about 20 minutes early, tried to log on to the Mevo, wouldn't let me do it, had to install the firmware update, still couldn't log on, it froze on an introductory screen, and just stayed frozen. So I uninstalled it, reinstalled it, logged on again, went to that same introductory screen and froze there. And no, I did not throw my phone across the room, because I know it's not the phone's fault. It's a shite software issue. And all you people like Alan Versapellis, Mike Lesser, Wesley Dixon, Erica, and my other regular viewers know that I've had these blues for quite a while, and it's all about the streaming platform. And when I get my house sold, and I've got some green to play with, theoretically, I promise you and myself that I'm going to get myself a better camera and a better software platform and never deal with this Mevo bullshit ever again. And I will drink a jug of Danbury tap water to that thought and that action. Goes down smooth. So yes, to answer some questions that have been asked of me, it is still Danbury tap water. It is still my little cabin in the woods. It is still P.O. Box 3626, Newtown, Connecticut. But in theory, that won't be lasting too much longer. The ongoing saga of the sale of Tent Talks Tunes Studios and the house that it's attached to continues onward, but we have reached a couple of significant points. One, I got an offer on the house that I can live with. Two, it's got conditions attached to the offer that I can certainly live with. Three, hired a lawyer this morning to get the paperwork overseen. Four, the realtor is cautiously enthusiastic about it. And because of all that, it is quite conceivable, I'm not going to say definite, nothing's written, nothing's etched in stone, but with those four factors in place, it is quite conceivable that I will be out of here by December 15th, which means I will be in North Carolina real soon after that. So my goal of getting out of here and down there by the end of the year is within reach. It's within reach. Is it within my grasp? I don't know, but it's within reach. So let's keep trying, guys. There is an appraiser coming over tomorrow. One of the conditions for getting the loan is that the house must be appraised. Okay, fine. The appraiser's coming over tomorrow. Excuse me, I'm going to make myself scarce. And that's just another step forward in the process. So, wish me luck, guys. Wish me luck. Regardless of the status of the sale of the house, I can tell you for a fact that this backwards flyer you see for the Danbury Record and CD Expo is valid. I will be in town November 23rd at the VFW Hall number 149 in Danbury. It'll be me in a room full of dealers, and the room's filling up pretty good. We've got some really exciting dealers signed up. We've got Northern Void Records, who specialize in all kinds of tasty, heavily metallic records. That's heavy metal to you. Mr. John the Bomb Coletti, long-time Connecticut punk rocker who's been having an eternal garage sale. And every time he comes to the Danbury Record and CD Expo, he just seems to have loads and loads of just awesome stuff that he's fished out of his garage and puts on the table and sells. So that's always exciting. I will be there with a very limited spread, but I'll have a bunch of TPOS stuff represented. I'll have some records, tapes, and CDs that I've picked up on the road over the last few weeks. And my, of course, always congenial personality, hospitality, and, well, there's a word that rhymes with both hospitality and personality, but I do not practice that, so we're not going to go there. My good pal Allison says, make Malcolm Southern again. Yes, MMSA, that's my motto. Going back to my homeland. I was born in Columbia, South Carolina, raised in Florida. I have been living very happily in Connecticut for the last 38 years. But sometimes you just gotta change the landscape a little bit. So that's what I'm doing. Allison, hope to see you in North Carolina sometime with you and Marnie in your mobile home. In whatever town I end up in. So yes, November 23rd, Danbury Record and CD Expo. It is happening. I will be there. You should be there too. Saturday, November 23rd. December 7th, at the Milestone in my soon-to-be kind of semi-new hometown, Charlotte, North Carolina. December 7th, the Milestone, anti-scene, not Nisitna, as it says in this backwards video, but anti-scene, live at the Milestone. It is their 55th birthday anniversary. That is double nickels on the anniversary. 55 years as the South's and one of the nation's longest running independent venues. Give it up for the Milestone. And we will be there with our good pals Future Hate, who are coming in all the way from Mobile, Alabama, and our rock and roll buddies Dallas Tetanus, who will be coming all the way from Raleigh, North Carolina. Anti-Scene have shared the bill with both of these fine bands, and we vouch for the high quality and vigorous presentation of both acts. Personally, I'm looking forward to it big time. That is not one, not two, but three heavy-duty bands on one bill. And it's the Milestone's 55th anniversary. I think yez owes it to yourselves to get down there and help us rock out. I will say, too, that Anti-Scene have got some very interesting surprises cooked up for this set. I will not reveal any of them. I might hint at one or two of them as the show goes on. I might not. Depends on how inspired I feel. I'll admit I'm a little bit burnt out because not just because of Mevo and their shite platform, but also because I spent most of the day staring at a computer screen. Oh yes, lots and lots of time staring at a computer screen. I was at Southbury Printing in Southbury, Connecticut today. Parked at a workstation with a digital book editing program, working on, you guessed it, a long-awaited TPOS release. That's TPOS release. Most TPOS releases are long-awaited because I'm a one-man guy. I do everything from printing the inserts to cutting them out, to folding them and sticking them in the cassette boxes, to placing the orders, to designing the graphics, to going to the post office. I do it all. So projects get finished as time permits. So a very long-awaited project on the TPOS roster has been a book. Yes, a book entitled My Misadventures with G.G. Allen. Written by his longtime roadie, merchandiser, and videographer, Len Colby. Len was there. He saw it all. He documented it all. He took the videos. He took the photos. And then he wrote his memoir. And TPOS is publishing it. And I guarantee you guys, it's a wild ride. So I was at Southbury Printing today all day long, squinting at the computer screen, placing text and proofreading and arranging and wrapping and doing all the things you do with text. Tomorrow I'm going back there to work on the photos, to get the photos all laid out. And then, if all goes well, I'll be going there Friday to get the cover laid out. And after that, it's up to Southbury Printing's press schedule. I know the holiday season is coming up and they're probably going to be really busy. But that's another one of those things that, in theory, should be done by the end of the week. So people who've been waiting a good long time for this book, it's really dangerously close. And I do believe that you will find it to be worth the wait. It's a jolly, rippin' read. I've read it so many times I can't even count. And every time I go through it to read it again, to proofread or, correct the layout or something, I seem to find a nugget that kind of eluded me before. And it's just like a constant thrill of discovery with this thing. So it's pretty neat. My Misadventures with G.G. Allen by Len Colby. Coming soon on TPOS book publications. Got some mail. Let's talk about the mailman and woman. First thing I showed, well, look at that beautiful, really cool, hand-drawn envelope from my good pal Mark Beef out in Tucson, Arizona. Mark was the lead singer for the Pop Gestapo, and he and my pals Murray Gelman and Ray Gelman, a.k.a. La Dama Dorada, are my hosts when I go out to Tucson, whether I'm touring or just vacationing. And he sent me a Halloween card. How cool is that? Thank you, Mark. Expect a holiday card from me in return. Got a couple of other things in the mail which I have not opened yet. These are cold openings. This is from my longtime noise-making cohort and pal Bobby Bunny. We started a band called the Bunny Brains together way back in 1988. And then we started a band called Ultra Bunny back in 2002, and that band's been going basically non-stop ever since. And Bob was recently over in the nation of Germany, being a bit of a tourist, and he said he was going to send me something. And it's in this envelope, I think. It's got a strange feel to it. I can't really tell what's in there. And there's a very subtle rattle inside of it. Very subtle. Can you hear that? Very subtle. So what's in this mysterious padded envelope from my pal Bobby Bunny? Well, let's get the 2 mile scissors here and open it up and find out. Yes, by the way, we're on to mile 2 with the scissors, this new pair of scissors replaced the million-mile scissors, which bit the ghost. Bit the ghost? Sure. Gave up the dust live on 10 Talks Tunes a little while ago. And we did indeed cross the first mile, going a few inches at a time on envelopes and boxes. So here we are into mile number 2. James Pogo of the Armed Delight Rifles wants to know, did I ever do my 10 Talks Tunes on the G.G. Allin psychology? Have not done it yet. Have been working on it. I'll tell you, it is a deep, deep well to fall into with the G.G. Allin psychology profile. And the thing is, and this is no fooling, guys, every time I think I've got my presentation on G.G. Allin psychology finished, something else will come up. Like I'll learn something new, or somebody will tell me something new, or I'll be reading through my notes and come across something that needs clarifying, or maybe something that wasn't accurate. And so it's just this constant process of updating it and refining it and trying to get it into a position where I can actually put it forth to the public and have it stand up to scrutiny. And it's the same deal. It's kind of like putting this book together. It's so close. It's so very, very close. And I made it my goal to get that thing done by the end of the year. I'm really trying. Don't know if I'll be able to, but yes, James' work is continuing apace on the G.G. Allin psychological profile. And since we're talking about G.G. projects that are actually in the works, a guy named Michael Bowen has been writing an official biography of G.G. From what I understand, it's in association with Blood Orange Records, a fine, fine label dedicated to G.G.'s back catalog and the intelligent reissuing thereof. This guy, Michael Bowen, has been interviewing all the heavy hitters in the story of G.G. Allin, and he got sidetracked because of a brush with some bad health. But I got an email with him yesterday saying that he's back in action. The interviews have been getting back on track. He's working on the book, and so good news. You've got several exciting G.G. Allin publications to look forward to. Mine, the Blood Orange one, and 2 or 3 others that I'm not going to discuss just yet. But these are, should be really well done, really intelligently done, researched, written books about a very prickly, thorny subject. Mike Lesser, my main man from Vancouver, BC, says the first time he heard G.G. Allin was on Radio Free Living Room. One of the best radio shows ever to hit the airwaves, hosted by the amazing Eric Moss on WLRN in Miami, Florida. Back in the early 80s, oh yes. I stayed up many a Monday night, jeopardizing my performance at school and the occasional job to tune in to Radio Free Living Room. And I always had my finger on the pause button of the cassette recorder ready to hit go whenever a song that I liked came on. And I still have a couple of those tapes with the beginnings of many really awesome songs missing because you couldn't hit the pause button fast enough. Radio Free Living Room. Yes. I digress. What's in the bag? Well, Bob wrote to me and asked what kind of souvenirs I wanted from Germany. And I told him I wanted vegan hot dogs in a can. I think it's safe to say this is not a can of vegan hot dogs. Mike Lesser says he's got many tapes of Radio Free Living Room. Oh my God, Mike. Mike, help a brother out. Hit me, as James Brown would say. I need to hear some of those, man. I'll trade you mine for yours. How's that? I'll send you copies of what I got if you send me copies of what you got. It'll be an international culture exchange via the extremely unlikely state of Florida. What do you think? Anyway, is it a can of vegan hot dogs? Probably not. Although he did send me a picture of jars of non-vegan hot dogs on a supermarket shelf in Germany. Non-vegan hot dogs in a jar. This is not them. This is a strange package. Oh, it's edibles. Oh, okay. What is this? Vegestory snack? Plant-based? Long, thin sticks of some sort? Lots and lots and lots of foreign writing on the back. Protein, iron. What are these things? Let's find out. This is straight from Germany. With a long letter from Bob on Japanese stationery. Ah, what do you know? Okay. It's a reasonable substitute. There were no vegan hot dogs in a can, but there were, you can see this, long, thin, vegan sausages in a package. How's that for service? Bob, you are a mensch. Thank you so very much. I cannot see any circumstance that will prevent me from devouring this whole thing in a very short period of time. Probably on my next road trip to North Carolina for the Anti-Scene Gala Blowout, December 7th. This will keep me alive on the drive. Yay, thanks, Bob. Appreciate it. Bob's already the man who's got everything, so I can't send him anything, but I will drink a toast to that super fine Danbury tap. To Bobby Money. Now, this next bit of stuff came from my pal Todd from Chicago. I've known Todd for years and years and years. He used to run a distribution called Choke. And when I had brick and mortar, Trash American style, I would order from Choke all the time. Choke is one of my favorite distributors. And I lost touch with lost touch with Chuck for a good long time, but thanks to the wonders of the internet and Facebook, we reestablished contact. And Todd, just out of the blue, sent me a little package. And I got to tell you, the way he wrapped that thing up, it was mummified. And it took me quite a bit of blood, toil, tears, and sweat to open it. Too much to do live, but hey, I got the contents right here, and I want to show you guys. Todd knows me very well. He knows that I would love to have the Thor comic book, and I'm not talking about Marvel. I'm talking about Thor, the Rock Warrior, the Canadian muscle man, gone heavy metal. If you don't know Thor, you better find out. See if we can get this in. There's a picture of Thor. Can you see that? Look at that guy. Look at him. That is muscle rock personified. Really hope you can see that. Thor, including the album Keep the Dogs Away, which I used to see in the cutout bins all over the place when I lived in Florida. Little dreaming that someday I would not only promote shows for this guy, but put out a couple of his records, which are high points in the TPOS catalog. So Thor, the Rock Warrior in comic book form, from my pal Todd. He also knows that I've got a certain weakness. Greg, my pal Greg, remembers Thor. I would certainly hope so. If you guys don't know Thor, go onto YouTube, look up Thor Rock Warrior. I guarantee satisfaction. Not only do I dig Thor, oh, look at that. Thor stickers. Who is going to be able to resist a presentation like that? Thor once said, and I quote, "I believe in the power of rock and roll, and I will do anything to entertain my audience." That is an aesthetic and an ethos that I can get behind 100%. Thor stickers. And yes, you guessed it. You're not going to really have an episode of Tent Talks Tunes without some mention of Devo. Sometimes deliberate, sometimes purely by chance, as when Pals like my main man Todd in Chicago sent me Devo patches. Thank you. Thank you, Todd. And he also fished out of the archives an authentic, genuine flyer for Anti-Scene Live in Chicago. Probably sometime around 1992, 91, I'm going to guess. Pretty good undercard. Big Chief, featuring Barry Hensler, formerly of the Necros. The Strangulated Beat-Offs, which was a Drunks with Guns offshoot. At Dreamers in Chicago, check out the start time, 11 p.m. They didn't even open the doors till 11 p.m. That is definitely the 90s. Oy vey. That's one thing I don't miss at all about the 90s. Starting at 11 p.m. and coming home smelling like an ashtray. I'm sure some of my fellow old-timers remember those days. Actually, you know what? I'll take that back. Back in the day when I had brick and mortar, those late start times were a boon for myself and other retailers like me, because we'd be working at the store, like Trash American Style closed at 8 p.m. So I could work a full day at the store, close at 8, rush and get out of there by 8:30 if all went well, and then drive down to New York City or whatever venue and still get there in time to catch the show. And be up all night, all night, get home around probably 2 or 3 in the morning, maybe 3 or 4 in the morning sometimes, reeking of tobacco smoke, bleh. Get 4 or 5 hours of sleep, open the store the next day, and do it again. Back in the days when we truly were indestructible and did not have to budget time to sleep. I turned 60 recently, and I'm telling you the truth, guys. The only thing that I really miss about being younger is not having to sleep. It seemed like sleep was a lot more optional back then. Whereas sleep, and if anybody knows me knows I'm speaking the truth, sleep is mandatory now. It's mandatory. I've got to have a good night's sleep. And if you feller oldsters know what I'm talking about, give me a thumbs up, or show me some hearts, or an angry face, or, some horns or something. All talking about the fact that we got to get our sleep. Ah, there it is. I see the reactions coming in. Yes. My fellow old coots and geezers and stodgy codgers, we all know you got to get your sleep. Oh, yeah. Anyway, I digress. More mail. By the way, thanks again, Todd. I appreciate it so much. This is something I mail ordered, so I kind of know what's in here, but I haven't seen the contents yet. And this is something that excites me quite a bit, because this is a certain type of collecting that I've been into for a long time. Since I have just about every single Devo record there is to have, and Sun Ra records are basically too expensive to collect anymore. Although I do sometimes find them. For example, when the almighty Anti-Scene did our most recent run of shows in Texas and Louisiana, which, by the way, were so much fun that I really, by law, should not be allowed to have that much fun, but a total blast. Playing, so much fun. Audiences, small but strong. Being in the van with my boys, a laugh, if not a minute, then every 5 minutes. Guaranteed minimum of 1 laugh every 5 minutes when you're in the van with Anti-Scene. Good music, bunch of music geeks and wrestling geeks together in one van talking about music and wrestling. What's not to love? I see my compadre Walt Wheat is tuned in. Walt was there. He knows. Walt the man with the guitar. Ooh, it feels so good. That giant electric razor sound that we crave so much from the almighty Anti-Scene. Oh, it's good. Anyway, we did our shows, and I went to a really fine record store in San Antonio called the Corn Pound. And would you believe it? They had a Devo record that I did not have in my collection. Good God Almighty. Yes. And since we were trading product, TPOS product for store product, I walked out of there with a genuine French pressing of the Devo B-Stiff 12-inch single on yellow vinyl with hype sticker affixed to the outer sleeve. Do you hear what I'm saying? Do you hear how clearly and deliberately I'm saying it? Yeah. A Devo record that I didn't have already. B-Stiff 12-inch French pressing yellow vinyl with custom France-only labels. Not bad. So the search is never over. There's always something out there I need. Anyway, I've been getting into song poems. I've been into song poems for a long time. Long time. I've devoted a fair amount of airtime on Tent Talks Tunes to the phenomenon of song poems. And in case you were wondering, I'll give you just a little bit of refresher. You would see the advertisements in wrestling magazines, romance magazines, Popular Mechanics, sleazy tabloids saying, famous songwriters need lyrics. Send us your poems and lyrics for free evaluation. Possible royalties. You could get a hit. And so the person reading the magazine would send in whatever they had laying around in hopes of getting a hit record. What they got for a very high price was a record with 99% of the time a bunch of studio hacks who did not care in the slightest bit about what they were doing, recording tracks, and then just sight reading the lyrics off a sheet of paper while the band played and pressing the results onto vinyl. And I just got a couple of song poem records I didn't have before. These are both by a guy named Jim Wheeler. I was not aware of Jim Wheeler, but apparently Jim Wheeler was one of those dudes who worked double overtime at the Song Poem Factory, cranking these records out. Now, I'm not aware of either of these labels, Panorama or Triumph, but I was able to hear samples of these, and they're pretty wild. One's called That Certain Feeling. The other's called All to Myself. The other one is called Guardian Angel. And the other one is called Christian. And the thing is, you can't always tell how sane or insane these records are going to be by the titles. Sometimes the titles will give it away. Sometimes not. One of my favorite examples of that ever, there's a song called The Will of God that appears on a song poem collection. And the first full half of the song is a pretty standard Christian lyric. You know, love of God, love of Jesus, you know, nothing out of the ordinary at all. But then the third verse kicks in. It's like you have to go through 2 minutes or so of this song, hearing really standard lyrics, and the third verse, I paraphrase, is, "It is the will of God. Will you follow Jesus or Adolf Hitler, who wants a secret Nazi dictatorship?" Whoa. And it just kind of goes off the rails from there. It's like 2 verses of complete normality, and then all of a sudden, this guy's singing in all sincerity about the secret Nazi dictatorship. It's like, okay, you never know. You just never know what you're going to get with these things. So I ordered a couple of these, and as you may know, I've always got an ulterior motive when it comes to releasing records. Another TPOS project that has been on the back burner for so long I'm almost embarrassed to say it. TPOS number 147. And just to give you a clue, I'm up to number 268 now. So this is 121 releases ago. I started working on my own collection of song poem records from vinyl that I own myself. And I hope you guys can see this collage. And I hope this is clear enough to make out, but the collage is kind of like my own humble attempt to do a visual representation of the song poem process. And over the years, I've collected stacks of 45s, a pretty fair pile of records, and I've combed through all of them to find the best, weirdest, most wonderful song poems in my collection. So Volume 1, which is all 45s, is finished. That's the front. I showed you the back. Here are the labels. As is so often the case, it's just a matter of me getting them made. And that's going to be pretty darn soon, guys. So if you love the weird, the wild, the obscure, the arcane, the wacky, the bizarre, and sometimes the good, sometimes a real, genuine good song comes out of these things, keep your eye open for the Vintage Song Poem Singles Parade coming out soonish on TPOS. So what did I find while I was on the road? Not only did I play 4 songs of the Almighty Anti-Scene, but I played 3 solo gigs with my good pal Tim Holhouse from England. Always a delight to share the stage with him. Between those 2 runs, in a course of just a little bit over a week, I played Lafayette, Louisiana, Shreveport, Louisiana, Austin, Texas, San Antonio, Texas, Athens, Georgia, Wilmington, North Carolina, and Charlotte, North Carolina, and hit record stores in quite a few of those cities. Plus, in my so-called downtime, record stores in Augusta, Georgia, and where did I go on the way back? They do tend to blur together after a while. Augusta, Georgia, and Washington, D.C. Duh. 3 great record stores in one day in Washington, D.C. And I picked up a few things, and I love to show and tell. I love to show and tell. And you guys, if you're tuned in and have stayed with me for this entire time I've been on, you're music freaks and geeks just like me. And you love weird formats, and you love weird music and good formats. Let's drink a toast to that. How about we start with both weird and good? Oh, and Walt Wheat pointed out that we stopped at T-Bone's Records in Hattiesburg, Mississippi. Also, thanks for the reminder, Walt Wheat. T-Bone's is Walt's local record store in Hattiesburg. And what did I get there? I got a residence record in Hattiesburg. Yes. Got a residence record for the collection, which is not here. I can't show it to you guys. It's in storage in North Carolina, but collecting residence records is another slippery slope. Those guys have more stuff to collect than Carter had pills. Anyway, I got this at Joint Custody Records in D.C. Smash Records in D.C. This is something I never even knew existed, okay? Now you guys know, if you've watched Tent Talks Tunes, that I have a total love for 8-tracks. I totally love the Beatles, and I totally love weird versions of all of these. And this is a pretty weird thing. This is not only the Beatles, but it is a counterfeit Beatles 4-track. Not 8-track, this is a 4-track. Okay, let's see. The queries are coming in. Before I wax rhapsodic more about the counterfeit Beatles 4-track, Walt Wheat reminds me that T-Bone's had a Gentrys record. Yes, the Gentrys, with their chart single "Keep On Dancin'." Who here, I'm going to put this to the public, This is where the professional wrestling aspect of things comes in. We've addressed Devo, we've addressed song poems, we've addressed anti-scene. We haven't talked about wrestling yet, okay? What do the gentries have to do with professional wrestling? I'll give you guys a second to cogitate upon that. And I'll rephrase the question. The gentry's lead singer ended up having a very long and storied career in professional wrestling. Who was he? And what did he do? James Pogo has guessed already. He knew before he even started talking. Erica knows. Yeah, you guys know. The gentries, MGM recording artists, and later the so-called Sun Records recording artists, featured a lead singer named Jimmy Hart. Yes, Jimmy Hart, the mouth of the South. And he actually ended up doing a lot of music for WWF. He did, I believe, a lot of stuff with Jerry Lawler as well. Genuine musical chops. Possessed by Jimmy Hart, the mouth of the South. So, if any of you guys out there are wrestling completists and you want to add to your collection, you got to start looking for those Gentry's records now. See, it never ends. It never ends. The Gentry's Brown Paper Sack. What album is that on, Pogo? I don't recognize that one. Was that a single? Gentry's had, I think, 2 late period 45s that never appeared on albums, and they are a killer. They're really good. I only got one of them. Is Brown Paper Sack one of those later day Gentry's 45s? I got to know. To quote Jeff Clayton, you got to tell me something. Okay, it was a single. All right, what label did it come out on, James Pogo? Was it Sun? Not only do the people need to know, I need to know. And then my good pal John Bridges wants to know what Residence record I got. Maybe not the most exciting Residence. It was a Record Scam Day release. And we already know my opinion of Record Scam Day. But some good stuff does come out of it, including a record, I believe it was called Leftovers Again, volume whatever by the Residents, featuring a whole bunch of unreleased recordings from the early 80s, which for me was prime residential time. So, yeah, very happy to have that. I also, I should have shown this earlier. Pardon me for 1 second, guys. We're talking about the Residents. We're talking about mail. Hold on a second. Don't go away. I also took the liberty of finding myself a really good cheap copy. And I'm going to have this for sale at the Danbury Record and CD Expo on November 23rd. As John Bridges says, Record Scam Day is good for leftovers. Yes, it is true. Not every record store can sell the prodigious volume of Record Scam Day vinyl that they order. And yeah, you find a lot of remainders. And I do enjoy picking through those remainders. Look at the thickness. Dig the heft of this Residence book, Sight for Sore Eyes, Volume 2, with a piece of advice. Residents, what? Ignorance of your culture is not considered cool. Well said by the Residents. Big, thick book, awesome graphics. Bonus 45 RPM single. I love the Residents. I really, really do. Genuinely, legitimately, probably the weirdest band ever. And they do it with no effort whatsoever. And I've been a fan of theirs since about 1986. And they just keep on going. So yeah, Residents. Anyway, that was yet another digression. So yeah, check it out. Before, there were 4 tracks. Take 2. So, check it out. Before, there were 8 tracks. There were 4 tracks. Same principle as an 8-track. It came in a cartridge. Almost identical in size and design. But the difference is that where 8-tracks have a pinch roller and pressure pads built into the cartridge, 4-tracks didn't. The player had the pinch roller and I'm guessing some kind of pressure pad, because there's a hole there where a pressure pad would go. The pinch roller and pad were in the player itself, so you would shove the 4-track in there. The pinch roller and pressure pad would engage, and you would listen to it. And we all know that 4-tracks were always divided into 4 programs. 4-tracks were only divided into 2 programs, which mirrored side 1 and side 2 of an album. And I don't know how these things sound. I've never actually heard one of these things. But you could have knocked me over with a feather when I saw a truck stop counterfeit of a 4-track. You see the 8-tracks all over the place, but I've never seen a counterfeit of a 4-track. You never even see 4-tracks in the wild. I mean, they were professionally manufactured by the record labels, but it was a very short-lived format, so you hardly ever come across 4-tracks in the wild, let alone a counterfeit. So that's extremely esoteric, very weird, something I never knew really existed, and it's the Beatles Magical Mystery Tour. So put that one on the books, or on the bookshelf as the case may be. Wow, James Pogo asks, Resident's version of Satisfaction versus Devo's version of Satisfaction. Man, that's like asking a guy, what do you prefer, eating or breathing? I'll put it this way. I'll say that the Resident Satisfaction is like eating, and the Devo Satisfaction is like breathing. Let's leave it at that. Found myself another cool Beatles item. I honestly, never thought of myself as a Beatles collector per se, but I think I am. I think I am a Beatles collector at heart. Not on the level of like a Perry Cox or a Parlogram Auctions, but I always pick up Beatles stuff. Whenever I see cool Beatles stuff at a good price that I don't already have, I just get it. I just pick it up. I can't help it. And I got a number of Beatles things, quite a few of which are back in storage in North Carolina, but this one I found in D.C. This was from joint custody. I'm sure everybody knows this one, Introducing the Beatles. This is quite possibly the most counterfeited record of all time. Long story short, this record was in print for less than a year in 1964. Yes, it sold a pretty fair number of records, but apparently only a little over 1 million. I mean, like 1 million records is still 1 million records, but in terms of Beatles, that's not much. In print for less than a year, and then sometime in the late 60s, early 70s, some enterprising soul started making knockoffs of these because VJ Records was out of business. The label it was on, VJ. VJ was out of business. Who was going to contest them making counterfeit versions of a record that was on a label that didn't exist anymore? So the counterfeiters really seized on these and just cranked out like millions and millions and millions of them. And because of that, you see the fakes all the time. You don't see the real ones nearly as often. Not nearly as often. And I've always been very fond of this because I bought one of those counterfeits at the dime store in my grandmother's neighborhood, Opelika, Florida, when I was a kid. I was like fascinated by the fact that they had at the dime store a Beatles record for like whatever it was, $1.99. If you went to a real record store like Specs or Vibrations or any of the department stores, you couldn't get a Beatles record for less than $5.99. But wow, Beatles record for $1.99. And I've never seen this one at one of the real record stores or department stores. What is this? For $1.99, I had to take a chance. And, you know, as is so often the case, you can imagine my surprise when I took it home and actually played it, and it was like a horrendous sounding piece of junk. It sounded terrible. If you listen to one of those counterfeits now, most likely you'll hear the sound of a Beatles record playing on a stereo system as recorded by somebody holding a microphone up to one of the speakers. In various, depending on the pressing, either close to the speaker or far away from the speaker. I mean, they're terrible. They sound horrible. But it was just such a weird thing. Like a Beatles record, it was cheap, it was at the dime store. What is this thing? Like, it really whetted my appetite to find out more. And it was a few years later when I started going to record swap meets that I finally found a real copy of this record. And one can go into all kinds of detail about the fakes versus the reals and how to tell the difference. Well, it's just suffice to say that there are so many of the counterfeits out there, and vinyl has made such a resurgence and such a comeback that what you're starting to see now is the counterfeits, mostly at, I'll just go ahead and say it, newer record stores, priced really high like they were genuine. It's become a syndrome. The numerous, completely not rare fakes of these being sold at the price of a real one. It's a syndrome. I don't approve of it. Whatever. Your arms are too short to box with God, as they say. The flip side is that occasionally a real one will turn up at a low price because the buyer, or I should say the seller, knows that it's most likely to be a counterfeit. Maybe they don't know all the telltale signs. They're like, oh, one of these fake pieces of junk, $5. And they put it out in the bin, and there it is. And that wasn't the case with this one, but this was a real one at a pretty good price. And the thing that made me extremely happy to see it was that it is an early version of it with the oval logo VJ label. All of the counterfeits of this thing have what's called the brackets label. This is the one with the oval label. You can see it's got the oval VJ Records logo. To the best of mine or anybody's knowledge, it was never counterfeited with an oval logo. And the oval labels were discontinued pretty soon after they started pressing these. So it's like a legit rare version of this album, and I was very happy to pick it up at a pretty darn good price. And since I've already got one, which I am keeping, I'm going to flog this one at the Danbury Record and CD Expo, November 23rd. At a somewhat high, but I think still very reasonable price. And if you come to the expo on the 23rd and we end up talking about that record, we're going to have a long, lively conversation. There have been entire books written about that album in the Beatles catalog on VJ Records. That's what we collectors do. It's what we do. We just can't help it. Talk about weird things to collect. I found this, where did I find this one? Don't remember where I found this one. The price tag on the front's not right, so I'm going to yank it off. You know, anybody who knew me in the 90s know that I spent my entire career in the 90s just absolutely hating on CDs. I hated CDs in the 90s. They were poorly mastered, they sounded terrible, and they were being rammed down the throat of the consumer and discontinued. I should say, as vinyl was being discontinued by the record labels because vinyl wasn't profitable enough. Whereas CDs were shockingly profitable. Oh yeah. But now that CDs have devolved into being what they're supposed to be, which is an affordable, portable, fun thing to release, it's my cue to bust out the Anti-Scene Falls Count Anywhere CD, which we made basically as a quickie for one event in Philadelphia earlier this year, the Eat the Turnbuckle Final Bloodbath. We made this one almost just as an afterthought, kind of, just for fun. It came out so good, and the CD itself was done so well with packaging by our pal Dave Norton, it ended up coming out so good, both sonically and graphically, that we decided to do a full-length vinyl version of it. And there it is, False Count Anywhere on vinyl. Graphics also by Dave Norton. I haven't opened this copy yet, but it's designed to look and feel like an old-style, old-school wrestling poster. It's slick on the inside, matte on the outside. I really, truly view this as a career highlight. 14 songs about wrestling. Awesome. All recorded by the current ultra lineup of Anti-Scene. And it started out live as a humble CD, proving yet again that CDs are good for something. So now they're affordable, now they're cool, and yes, I'm so much of a Led Zeppelin nut that I will pick up a live Led Zeppelin CD. They used to call them fan club CDs, but you know what I'm talking about. I got this at a good price. Typical 90s boot. Typical 90s boot, no information whatsoever. Super cheesy graphics. I mean, look at that. Front's not bad, but it's just cheesy. No information. And it turns out that it's a recording of Led Zeppelin from Los Angeles, California, 1985. And in typical boot fashion, the first 3 songs, actually the first 4 songs, are incomplete to varying degrees. It's an audience recording made by some guy at the Long Beach Arena. But it's just cool, it's cool. It's kind of the forbidden fruit, You couldn't get these things in regular record stores. And, like when I was in high school, just starting to get into these kinds of things, I would talk to some of the kids about, I got this live, think of a band who didn't have anything live out at the time. Rush, just for example, Rush. I got this really cool live Rush recording. Actually, Van Halen. I can tell you for a fact this was a conversation I had. I got this live Van Halen cassette. And the reaction would be like, Van Halen? Live? Where'd you get that? Can I hear it? I like that reaction. I mean, that was the reaction I had myself. I was like, what is this? It was like that counterfeit Beatles record. Where'd this come from? What is this? I need to know. So that's when I became an avid collector of boots. And so I picked up this Led Zeppelin CD and I listened to it, warts and all, on my drive home, and I loved it. I loved it. It was a great listening experience. It turned out it was one of the Mike Millard recordings. And if any of you guys out there are aficionados of the art of live recording, I suggest you look up Mike Millard, M-I-L-L-A-R-D, Mike Millard. Fascinating story. And the guy produced some of the best sounding audience recordings that you could imagine, from the mid-70s all the way up to the mid-80s. His technique was fantastic. I'm running out of time and running out of voice, so I'm not going to get too heavily into it. But Mike Millard, and that CD I just threw on the ground, was taken from one of his tapes. And so knowing his story just made it all the more interesting and all the more fascinating and all the much more fun to listen to. And cool artifact. And that's basically it. That's kind of my show and tell and travelogue and update and bulletin board showing and prognostication of the future right here, right now on Tent Talks Tunes. And I'd like to thank you guys for tuning in and letting me yap at you for an hour. Always great to have you guys on board. Great to see you guys out in the field when Anti-Scene plays live or when I play live doing my solo thing. And hopefully we'll see a bunch of you guys December 7th at the Milestone in Charlotte, North Carolina, or November 23rd at the Danbury Record and CD Expo. If not then in about 167 hours' time, when I do intend to be back here again. So until such time as we meet again, this is Malcolm Tent saying so long from the Nutmeg State.